All right. Good afternoon. Happy Black History Month. This is Hakeem Oseni, and I'm here to have a one-on-one chat with somebody I have the most respect for and who I consider a mentor, MK Palmore. MK, how are you doing today?
Hakeem, how are you? It's good to see you, my friend.
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. So, let's get into it. I'm gonna have tell me first of all, like what's going on, what's new, and then I'm gonna get into some questions that I have for you.
It's been a probably a couple of months since the last time you and I touched base. As you know, I left my role as the president of Cyversity and became ensconced in all things entrepreneurship. I launched my own consulting firm, which essentially takes a 7 day a week effort by me 24/7, 7 days a week. And what's been going on is trying to get an advisory service off the ground, building teams, landing clients, trying to execute well, and trying to keep a lot of different balls in the air. So extremely busy, but I've been certainly paying attention to and watching what's happening on the landscape, and certainly wishing the audience and everyone, hopefully they had an educational Black History Month. I always think that our History Month, as it were, is a time to dive a little bit deeper into what made us who we are today and what contributed to our success, and how we've been able to build this extreme resilience that we all seem to have operating in the environment that we're operating in. So been extremely busy, but always want to make time for the Cyversity audience for sure.
Thank you, and appreciate that. And let's lean a little bit deeper into some of those themes. Um, I think a lot of Black history, especially here in the United States, has been entrepreneurism, and you've made that switch from having a big corporate machine behind you, Palo Alto, Google, to doing this yourself. What are some of the changes in mindsets, or how does that work, and what are some of the challenges and the benefits? So give me the good and the bad about that.
Yeah, so let's start with the challenges. I mean, right out of the gate, you know this when you become an entrepreneur, you know that there's going to be a lot to do. You know that ultimately you are responsible for getting things across the finish line, and even if you're lucky enough, which I've been, to assemble a small team around you to help you execute, at the end of the day, the sense of urgency on accomplishment all falls on you, because at the bottom line, you no longer have this big machine behind you that's generating revenue, supporting you, and kind of handing you the opportunity to execute. When I was with Google and with Palo Alto Networks, I'd like to think, if I use a baseball analogy, they were slow. They were throwing me slow pitches, and I'm standing at the plate and I'm just knocking them out of the park. But when you run your own business, you're everything. You're doing the pitch. You got to run to the plate and you got to make the hit, and you got to field the ball. You got to get out there in you're doing everything yourself. So no longer do you have the power, nor do you have the name and the cachet of some of these big organizations that I work for. Although I have them as part of my pedigree, they're not the ones opening the door. They're not the ones asking for business. So at the end of the day, um, the amount of time, effort, and work is a challenge. It's challenging to strike off on your own. So make no bones about it. It's not for everyone. I am enjoying the learning process, and enjoying the development that I feel myself going through. But at the same time, it definitely is a ton harder than what I was experiencing as someone who was well compensated in an environment working for big name companies, and had it easy in terms of being asked to come to the stage and talk on behalf of these companies and getting into the rooms with executives and that kind of thing. I had it relatively easy. So when you become an entrepreneur, you are signing up for the hard part of creating something and getting something off the ground.
Okay. Now, so and how do you adjust your leadership or your leadership style? Well, first of all, before we get into that, I think your company has a couple of different pillars. One speaking and one is consulting. So in both of those sort of pillars, tell me about how you adjust your leadership style as opposed to your corporate leadership style.
Well, believe it or not, my corporate leadership style, I think, is very similar, except that I understand that as the founder of an organization, I am the one responsible for the culture that's being built in the organization. So, for all of the opportunities that I've had to recognize both good and bad leadership, I have to know that I'm responsible for creating that in the environment that I create for others. One of the things that I hold as a paramount requirement for whether or not at the end of the day this will have been a good experience is that the people that I do work with, it'll always be a small team. Right now it's just over 10. It'll probably never be more than 25 or 30 permanent people in terms of the overall apparatus. I want them to walk away from the experience and, hey, I enjoyed working with MK and the team at Apogee. I want them to feel like they were nourished, that they were contributed to their toolkit, that they developed as individuals, and for however long they stay with the organization, that it was a good experience for them. If they don't feel those things, then I have failed in terms of creating what it is that I set out to accomplish. Because I'm at a stage in my career where I get the opportunity to decide who I work with and what kinds of engagements I spend my time and effort on. And that's a unique place to be in. I recognize that not everyone has the ability to do that. And if I'm going to do that, I'm going to make sure that that the people who come in and out of this experience enjoy it, get something out of it in terms of growth. That they're surrounded by people who pay attention to the important things about leading, having people-centered leadership style, and that I don't bring anyone on board who is going to adversely impact that culture that I'm trying to create. So it's not different. It's just that I'm the one responsible wholly for it now. So I no longer get to complain on employee satisfaction surveys about something not being right. If it's not right, that means I'm responsible for it not being right.
Thank you. Tell me your thoughts on this quote. Leadership is a perishable skill.
That's an interesting quote. Leadership is a perishable skill. Here's how I will address my acknowledgement of that quote. I definitely think it's a discipline that requires people to study it. I also believe that the best leaders are ones who have a numerous, bag of experiences, so to speak. So I believe in the idea of iterations and at bats. The only way that you become a good leader is through experience, and most of that experience, at least the ones that stick with you, is going to come through failure. So that's bumping your knees in the dark, making mistakes, learning from those mistakes, and hopefully not executing them again. So I don't know that it's perishable. We carry our experiences with us from one experience to the next. What I do believe is that there's no end state to it. There's no end game. It's a journey that you're continuously on. No matter how many leadership experiences that I have, no matter how much I view myself as someone with deep experience in leadership, there's a new experience waiting around the corner because there's someone new that I haven't met, someone new that I haven't worked with. And there is in all likelihood a scenario that I've never experienced that I have to be ready for. And hopefully my experiences of the past will contribute to a successful engagement or experience in some way, shape, or form, but there are no guarantees there. So I do believe it's an unending journey that we're on as it relates to leadership. Hence, the name of the newsletter that I do on LinkedIn is called The Leadership Student. We're always students of this game and always will be.
Okay. You do a lot of public speaking. You encourage a lot of people to speak publicly. Tell me more about that, and why do you think that's important for an important skill for leaders to develop?
So I believe the skill of communication is a very, very important and underrated skill for leaders. When you think about the people that you admire as leaders and people that you look upon and say to yourself, those folks are great leaders, and you try and emulate how it is that they carry themselves or their approach to things, I will bet 100% of the time that you probably also view those people as good communicators. Communication is your pathway to getting people on board with your vision. It is your pathway to getting folks to understand the depth and quality of the experiences that you're trying to convey to them. And your ability to communicate is what's going to drive people to be inspired by you and then to subsequently potentially follow and work with you in any one particular environment. Public speaking is a component of that. I think that certainly the folks that we look upon in history as being great leaders have all been outstanding communicators, people who have a command of language and a way of speaking that brings us along on their journeys. I mean, you can drop the names: Obama, Dr. King, Nelson Mandela. All of these people have a way of communicating, or had a way of communicating in some instances, that were, inspirational to most of us, because they brought us into their vision, brought us into the journey that they are on, the journey they wanted to take us on. Words matter. Words inspire people, and they can also do the opposite. Words can, depress people. Words can change the mood, and so you want to be cognizant of the power that you wield as a leader, and you want to learn to be as best a communicator, as good a communicator as you possibly can be. And that comes in different stages. And one of the things of being a good communicator, um, you got to recognize game, right? There are some folks out there that really are just do an outstanding job at communicating. I've got to go back to President Obama again. When you watch that guy wield his command of the language and how it is that he carries himself and how he communicates really tough subjects, there's a certain amount you got to acknowledge his capability set there. I would say his communication skills might be. I mean, you could probably dig through a lot of different variables, but maybe the number one thing that was contributed to him being elected, at least the first go around. And certainly for those of us that look back on his presidency with some amount of fondness, certainly his communication skills were something that we all appreciated over time. It's a huge thing. And so I do encourage people to take advantage of every opportunity that you get to take that main stage, to speak, brief in a room, brief your colleagues, talk publicly, because if you can develop that skill set as something that's a trait that people identify with you, you can make a living off of it. First of all, people will pay you to hear from you, which is quite a good thing, quite a good position to be in. And it will also position you for opportunities of advancement. People promote people who can communicate well, as long as and you can be good at those other things, and if you can communicate well, actually that can put you in a position to be considered for some of the highest positions of responsibility.
So, a lot of people in cybersecurity, maybe the more technical people, are introverts. In fact, I think I've heard you describe yourself as a preferred introvert, right? But the people and the situations you've just described, I would describe those leaders of having good charisma. Like they were personalities, not just personas. They
Yeah.
were like personalities, and some people have that. I have it on a good day. I also have my really horrible days too, but most days I have it. I know a lot of people I work with just are uncomfortable being in front of people, just uncomfortable. How did you learn? And were you always like this? Did you always have this charisma with you?
I'm not sure that my kids would describe anything that I have as charisma or riz, but no, I didn't always have it. Whatever that is, I'm not even sure that I have it now. I am an introvert in every sense of the word. I think that for me, getting on stage or speaking in front of crowds is almost as if I have to put on a veneer of becoming someone else in order to engage in those environments. Like I do small exercises myself to make me feel more comfortable with the surroundings and setting that I find myself speaking in. I tell people little tricks of the trade. I like to see the venue before I speak in the venue. I do visibility exercises, like visual exercises before every speaking engagement.
What's a
That visual, yeah, that visual exercise is me executing the talk and succeeding. In other words, I imagine myself in that room, on that stage, in front of the crowd, going through the paces of my delivery, talking and speaking in a calm manner, delivering in exactly the way I intend to deliver it. And I imagine the audience receiving it in a way that it's intended to be received. And I can't tell you, maybe someone thinks that's crazy, but it really helps to settle my nerves. It helps to put me in a mental position. First of all, I assume I'm going to be successful. You'd be surprised how much that can do for you just in that regard, just assuming that you're going to have a good delivery and that your message is going to be well received. But imagining yourself doing it is a lot like getting a practice rep in. And in that practice rep, obviously you're going to execute in a way that hopefully replicates that. And then there are the other things like the breathing exercises, being in control of your pace and your rhythm and your delivery, and recognizing on those rare occasions when you get up on stage and maybe out of the gate, you lose control of your pace, rhythm, stopping, pausing, regaining that composure, and then slowing yourself down. Speaking slowly has an immense impact on your ability to then find the words that you need, and your delivery changes almost in a matter of a split second. Some of us, and I remember, certainly in my early days, I had a tendency to talk really fast when I was briefing someone or giving a talk on something. And it only took one or two times for someone to comment on me, walk up to me and say, "Hey, slow down a little bit, when you talk." And just to know that they recognized it, I recognized it, man, you got to get a hold of that thing real quick and make sure that that doesn't become common in terms of how it is that you deliver. So I'm not necessarily beyond that point, but I've gotten over it and I've figured out ways to make sure that I have a measured delivery, which is kind of my specialty at the moment.
Okay. Um, uh, so now tell me about the piece where you bring people in to speak. Like, what is that? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so I've had the benefit since retiring from federal service to probably 4 times, maybe 5 times a year in a good year, be paid for public speaking. Um, and that's all been intentional. I had the opportunity when I was in government to travel on behalf of the government, speak in all over the world in very different environments, and so use those at bats, those iteration opportunities to perfect my trade. I knew that my background and experience might be interesting to people, and I knew that my thought leadership on certain topics might be enough for people to pay me to express those opinions. And so explored the idea of joining a speakers bureau almost immediately out of when I got out of government, and was accepted to a fairly large speakers bureau, and then recognized the whole landscape with speakers bureaus is not necessarily what everyone expects it to be. When I decided to launch Apogee, I thought to myself, one, some of the best speaking opportunities that I've had have been through folks just reaching out to me directly. I have a pretty heavy presence on LinkedIn. There are folks that have seen me in speaking engagements and then asked me because they're involved in other causes to speak at other events, and I've accepted those opportunities. I decided to create my own speakers bureau because my impression of the speaker landscape, the keynote landscape, was that there was not enough women and people of color being given opportunities to speak. We have, I think, thought leadership that is just as good, if not better, than everyone else on the landscape. And so why aren't we given the normal opportunities? I mean, the number of times I've seen, white males be given opportunities to speak and then sat through their talks, and in some cases maybe they have some great stuff to say, in other cases they don't. They're probably 50-50 just like everyone else. Why are they predominantly given the opportunities to speak in front of audiences, and why do people pay to hear them when there are plenty of people out there who have really interesting takes on some very important ideas, especially in the technology space? And so I wanted to create an environment where we could bring in a diverse group of thoughts, leadership, folks to speak on technology and technology adjacent topics. And so I created the Apogee Speakers Bureau with that in mind. Now, what's that mean? It doesn't mean that only the speakers on there are women or people of color. Thankfully, I've got a very diverse group, an actual diverse group of speakers in the Speakers Bureau, but I also intentionally make room for folks that look like you and I, because I think that someone has to do it, first of all. I just think that, if I'm going to run a business that's complete with other services, this is something that I'm passionate about. And I want to make opportunities for others to get the same benefit that I've had, which is being paid to get on stage and express my ideas about things.
Wow. Okay. So we've gotten into leadership, we've gotten into speaking, overcoming fear speaking, tips and tricks. Now let's get back into you're running a business, 10 people. How do you, and what is your North Star? This is probably your third or fourth career. Can I say that? Like life, you've had immense experience. Like, what is your
Yeah.
definition? Let me put that in product management terms. Here you are, like, where do you want to take this?
Yeah. No, so that's a great question. Yeah. It's a fair question. Where do I want to take this? Definition of done, probably not a good description, because I don't think I'll ever be done with this, quote unquote. What I do believe is that there's something I consider, I'll describe it as in flight. It's not in flight now, but in flight to me is a vibrant consultancy, again, with those roughly 20 to 25 permanent employees on board. And we're operating globally, doing projects and engaging our target market, which is the SMB space and the global public sector, and bringing impact to those clients. So that's the business part of it. The professional or personal part of it is for all of those folks attached to Apogee, that those experiences contribute to their overall well-being, that they're able to make a living from these engagements, have a life, and to support their families and to do something that's interesting and cool to them. Like, it's got to be interesting. It's got to be enjoyable. Because if someone's working with me at Apogee and they are grinding and they feel that that's what they're getting out of the experience, then that's not at all what I'm intending to create. And so that state of in flight to me looks the way I just described. Small group, small team, engaged, making a living off delivering impact to clients and customers, and enjoying the experience of working together and delivering impact for our customers.
Wow. In flight, I like that term. Any last words for to close off Black History Month, advice for other entrepreneurs, advice for people who are thinking about giving up their corporate comforts and jumping into the entrepreneurial space?
Yeah, get ready for the hard times. As I teed up in the beginning, I feel like, one, I've got a lot to say about this experience of the current Black History Month. Not necessarily a lot to say in the context of this conversation that you and I are having, but African Americans, people part of the African diaspora, are resilient people, and I think that we find ourselves in a time where our resilience is being checked. And so, my advice to people as it relates to that is, hard times don't last forever. There is an end to this. There's nothing that stays the same. There is an evolution that's occurring that, there will be an end state to, and we'll move on to another phase. Keep checking in on that resilience. I say to myself very often, I am the descendant of people who made the Middle Passage and survived slavery. If they can do that, I can do my part.
Wow.
These times are not that tough. They survived something that killed millions of people, and they survived, and I know they did, or else I wouldn't be here. If they could do that, I can do my part, hold the line during my short time on this planet.
Wow. Very strong words. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this. Hopefully we have RSA coming up. We have some events coming for RSA. Check the website. And we'll see you out there. And thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your Friday.
Thanks for having me, Hakeem.
All right. Bye-bye.